Good morning, baseball fans. Chris Terrell here, RotorPros.com. Josh is going to be joining me here shortly. He's just tied up for a few minutes. I wanted to get things going. We've got about an hour here until lineup lock. We got two slates today. The early slate on FanDuel is going to be just 4 games, while the early slate on DraftKings, I believe we've got 6 games there. It's going to be the more favorable slate when looking at weather. Start breaking down tonight. We've got about 4 games that I've got currently rated out as a 4, which at a scale of 1 to 5, that's almost a full fade for me. I'm going to have to monitor those throughout the day. That looks absolutely terrible, this main slate. There are some good pitching that are in some good spots. We'll get into that here in a little bit. But for now, just want to kind of look at this early slate as we're getting closer to lock. I'm just kind of building some lineups as lineups are coming in, entering those in. So if there's like a silence here for a second, I'm just entering lineups into the cheat sheet so that's ready to go for everyone that's following along. I'm going to share that link here shortly. I'm not sure if I have done that yet today. So just give me a second here so that you can follow along if that's what you choose to do. That is now in the YouTube chat there if you want to check that out. So I guess while we're waiting for Josh here, what maybe I will do is I will go ahead and share my cheat sheet and we'll just have a look at a couple things here today. So just give me a couple seconds and I'll get that set up to where we can have a look at that. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so I got the cheat sheet up. I don't have any highlights in there yet. Sorry about that. Things have been really hectic here this morning. I had a cheat sheet completely fail on me. Okay. So Josh is going to be joining here in just a minute. So I'm just going to kind of go over the sheet while I get him sent over. So you can see the pitching here. My favorite pitcher on this early slate is going to be Ponce de Leon. Going up against Pittsburgh. There's no Josh Bell in the lineup for Pittsburgh this morning. So I'm definitely liking that a lot for Ponce de Leon. Just give me a second. We'll get Josh here with me. And he's actually been pretty good. He hasn't made a ton of starts this season. He's only made 4 starts, 7 appearances, a couple out of the bullpen. Last year he made 4 starts and 11 appearances. AAA, he's kind of struggled a bit this year. He's walking almost 5 per 9, but in his last start, which I believe was, the 12th. So he's in the regular rotation as of right now. He went 6 2/3 against Arizona, only gave up 3 hits and earned run, 7 strikeouts. So that was very positive to see. And then today, like I said, especially on FanDuel, I'm running the FanDuel. Josh handles the DraftKings stuff on a daily basis. I play both. We normally will play both, but we wanted to split it up a little bit easier. Hey, Josh, how's it going?
Hey, what's up, man?
Just got my cheat sheet share here for a second, so I'm just going to get that going while I'm talking to the people, and then me and you can kind of go over our favorite options here. So just give me a second. Bear with me.
Are we live?
We're live right now, yeah. I just was just kind of going over how crazy tonight's going to be with the weather. We've got 4 games that currently got rated out as a 4 to 5. Obviously, the higher rating is worse. So we'll have some issues there.
Do your thing. Keep going. I don't want to interrupt. Sorry.
There's your pretty face. Got it on the screen now, so we can all see you. Yeah, so those games, I was just talking about the early slate. I like the early slate because of the no weather concerns, but I hate the early slate because of the pitching options. I was just actually talking about Ponce de Leon for St. Louis. They're minus 140 favorites in a good park. And what I like about this, especially, I mean, Pittsburgh's tough to target, but with the other options, and Josh Bell's out of the lineup today. They got Jose Osuna hitting 4th, and then like from 5 down, you got Cabrera, Moran, Kang, and Stalin. So I'm not too worried about that Pittsburgh lineup today without Bell. It's kind of like taking an Angels lineup and taking Mike Trout out for me. Yeah. So how are you looking at it? Who's your pitcher that you're really targeting on this early season?
I mean, I didn't think much of Ponce de Leon until you said what you said, but it's true. And the Pittsburgh lineup is very weak. His price is a little too high, but there's very lack of options. Obviously, you're not going to play any of the pitchers in the Coors slate. That's just not advisable. I was looking at Homer Bailey a little bit.
Yes.
Homer Bailey's probably the cheapest I would go on this slate.
I definitely like Bailey. I haven't highlighted him yet. I'm going to do that right now. I was actually looking at his stats because, yeah, he just got traded over to Oakland. We were going to be playing him, I think, in his last start there for KC, and then we had to do some late scratches because he got traded there. But, yeah, I definitely like – I mean, he's only 7,000 on both slates, a minus 185 favorite. And Seattle is not the team that we've seen in the first months of the season. They're striking out 25% of the time versus righties, although they are about league average versus righties.
Yeah.
But over like the last 2 weeks, they're working with last 7 days, 50 WRC plus, last 14 days, 68 WRC plus. So definitely on board with Bailey cheap. I mean, if I was running DraftKings today, which I'm not sure I'm going to have time just because we got about 50 minutes to lock here, I would be looking at a combination of Ponce de Leon and Bailey. I don't know. I don't really feel like risking it.
You got 2 hours to lock, brother.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Locks in.
Oh my God. You just made my whole entire day. You realize that?
Yeah, 1:10 for me, so you got 2 hours.
1:10. Okay, yeah, right. Okay, so I totally
unless
had the time off.
At least DraftKings is in.
Yeah, well, no, I just looked at FanDuel, same thing. I actually thought it was like 10 a.m. right now, and it was like an hour to lock. So I've been freaking out literally for about an hour and a half.
There you go.
So you literally just made my day. I feel like I've won already.
You're welcome.
Oh, that's awesome. Cool. So, yeah, those are kind of my two main pitchers. I guess I'd give maybe a little love. Darvish is ranked highest in my model when looking at it. Just my rankings, my basic model. He's got a little bit lower xFIP. He's got an above average K rate, and that's kind of what I always look to Darvish. I know he walks a shitload of batters, gives teams, you can target against him in certain situations, but you can also target him as well. And I said this, I believe, our last show. He can put up 10 Ks, 11 Ks in a start. And Cincinnati is a lot better versus lefties overall for the season. An 82 WRC plus and 24% K rate versus right-handed pitching. It kind of lines up maybe as a GPP play if you want to go that route.
Yeah, I always consider Darvish somewhat of a GPP play just because he's so either. I mean, look, we came into the MLB as a stud. He dominated Japan, and then he just went through this like injured, inexplicable like period where he was just getting rocked. So yeah, I don't know. Apparently, he's kind of found his groove again somewhat. I mean, he's been pretty consistent his last 5 starts, I would say. He's gone for at least 5 innings or more in the last 5 starts. He still gives up 5 earned runs in a few of them, and then in others he gives up 1 or 0, and and then another time. But his Ks are pretty consistent, and that's what's important for DraftKings. I would say. Let's do some quick math here. 8, 6, 12, 38 divided by 5. He's almost averaging about 8 Ks a game, just under in his last 5 starts. So that's obviously very good. But he's priced appropriate, I would say.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you there. I would never trust him for
cash games. The biggest GPP, I would say, of the day, just because it's cores. But, San Francisco put up 19 runs the other day, and but then when you look at the numbers, they obviously don't have the best WRC plus against right-handed pitching. So, it's definitely a GPP play. Not something I would recommend because there are other viable options. But if you want to be different, play little John Gray.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I missed the start of that. You were talking about John Gray.
John Gray is a GPP option.
No, I'm 100% on board. He's got K upside, and he, like you said, he has not been terrible lately. He's only given up.
Oh, even at home too.
Yep. Just looking at his splits, breaking down his splits here a little bit. He's actually had an ERA 1 run better at home so far this season, and it's a 3.24 ERA at home in Coors is pretty damn good. He's only given up a 3.03 WOBA at home and a 250 average. So he's given up more. This is a good one. He's given up more home runs, double the home runs, 10 on the road than he has at home, 5. Which it just blows me away.
But the numbers don't lie.
Yeah. So I'm on board with you that he can be a contrarian GPP play. So that's we kind of give you 4 pitchers there.
Yeah, when you have these early slates with only 6 games, and pretty much everyone thinking the same thing, there's going to be a lot of Ponce de Leon today because of the Pittsburgh lineup being weak, things like that. And everyone's going to remember the 87 runs that have been scored in cores the last couple of days. And the last thing they're going to be thinking is to play the pitcher. So it's just sometimes that works. I'm not saying to put your bankroll on it and don't do it if you're, playing cash games. But, yeah, why not? GPP.
Yeah, I'm with you. I love these small slates. I can't even talk this morning.
Yeah, me neither, dude. I'm struggling.
Flustered earlier. I've only got half a cup of coffee in me.
I haven't had my coffee yet. I'm still thrown off by this crazy sunburn I have.
Okay, so we got some late lineups that we're probably going to have to wait on. We're not going to be able to see them, like San Francisco, Colorado's the 3:10 Eastern game. The 3:37 is the Seattle and Oakland. Those two games are on the DraftKings slate. As for the FanDuel, it's just a smaller 4 game. The only lineup not in yet is Atlanta. So I guess let's look at some offenses that we're targeting. Being that the pitching maybe isn't that great, we should have some offenses that we can target. And right off the bat for me, I do like going against Keuchel. He's maybe getting going a little bit, but Milwaukee's got their loaded lineup out there. One thing that stands out to me from a value perspective, I just entered that lineup in now, and this is why I'm going to Milwaukee first, is Keston Hiura, highly touted prospect. Is, he came up early in the season. He performed above expectations. They had to send him down just to make room for, I believe, Travis Shaw when he came back. He's back up in the big leagues now, and he's just absolutely on fire. He's got hits in like 5 straight and like 6 of his last 8 games, multi-hit games in 4 of his last 5. He's got 3 doubles in that time, a triple, 3 home runs. He's just absolutely everywhere. And he's only 3,400 on FanDuel. So, at second base, he's definitely going to be like my top guy for second base today. I know that for sure on the early slate.
Yeah, he's swinging a hot bat right now.
So
no
Milwaukee, just going to grab a number here. Just give me a second. Yeah, they're going up against Keuchel. Keuchel's still pretty much in spring training, right?
He's been teamless. And if you look at his xFIP, it's 4.5 compared to a 3.09 ERA. So that as well suggests regression.
The strikeouts are troublesome too. The whip is up there.
Many people. He hasn't been the same Keuchel that he was in like 2 years. It seems like, but he used to be so good. Look, he's decent on a team. He's like a back end number 4 starter now. Like on a team that's going to give him a ton of run support, like the Braves offense should most nights. And where he has to go out and throw like a quality start, maybe should be like his target. That's about the most he can do. 6 innings, 3 runs, maybe 4 Ks or something.
He's even, he was never a 95 low 90s even fastball type guy, but last
few years ago.
Last few years, he's been running about 89.5 mile an hour fastball. Well, this year it's down to 88, like the average velocity over like his first 5 or 6 starts, which can be a little bit concerning. It's a small sample size, but that's something to definitely track.
4 years ago.
Got to get that strength up.
He won the Cy Young not too long ago.
That's crazy.
2015.
How they come and how they go.
And he won it convincingly, too. David Price was 40 points behind him, and Sonny Gray was 100 points behind him.
Yep.
And then Chris Sale was chilling 150 points behind all of them.
Yeah, no doubt, eh?
So,
The only concern with me for him is the ground ball rate. He gives up a ton of ground balls and not a bunch. It's under 20% fly balls. So that's the only concern. But like I said, with Hiura moving up in the lineup, that just gives you some flexibility there.
He's always had a high ground ball to fly ball ratio.
Yeah. So I don't think he's going to be high up. I don't see Milwaukee going out and smashing 4 home runs against him by any means. But it's a cheap way to go. It's tough to say. It's weird to say that because Yelich is right there. But with Kane, Braun, and Hiura hitting 1, 3, and 4, with Yelich hitting 2, they're all in the low 3K range on FanDuel. So it's a little bit easier on FanDuel to fit them as a stack. But with Ponce de Leon being 7,300, that's kind of the way I'm leaning early. Is Milwaukee bats and then Ponce de Leon. I know on the 4-game slate on FanDuel, I won't be playing cash games. It's just going to be GPP. Just the combination of not a lot of players to select from. The pitching is not great. I don't get those 2 late. I don't get the Colorado game or the Seattle-Oakland game, which I really, really like today as well. So I'm going to be GPP only on that 4-game slate. DraftKings, I like it a little bit more for cash, but I'm still kind of leaning GPPs today. I don't feel comfortable in cash when I don't feel comfortable with my pitcher.
Yeah, it's pretty simple way to look at it, but I agree completely. Especially with the 2 pitchers, hard enough.
Yeah. What after Milwaukee? What offenses are you looking at?
I like Minnesota a lot. I always like Minnesota, and I always target against Jason Vargas. I don't think he's as good as he's kind of been playing. He's not been like a Cy Young, but he's been playing well enough where people haven't been targeting against him. His ERA has been going up a little bit lately, so it was like 3.5, 4, but now it's 4.23. He's still got a 5.16 xFIP, so even more regression should be on the way. He throws his fastball like almost 42% of the time or 41% of the time. So, he's a lefty. He's throwing a lot of fastballs. He doesn't throw harder than like 90 or 91, so it's not.
Whoa. Yeah, I'll stop you there. This is going to make you even feel better about going against Vargas. He throws his fastball 52% of the time this year, and it's only 85 miles an hour.
Yeah, exactly. That's just,
and he got blown up in his last start by Miami. So, the regression definitely hit, and I think there's more to come 100%.
And then if you look at Minnesota's numbers against left-handed pitching, they have a 361 WOBA, which I believe is the highest in the league. 125 WRC plus and a 215 ISO. So they crush left-handed pitching.
Nelson Cruz.
Sorry, Houston's higher.
Yeah. Nelson Cruz would be my top bat for them. He's ridiculous against left-handed pitching again this season. 381 WOBA, 138 WRC plus, 71% hard contact rate for Nelson Cruz against left-handed pitching. There's 71%. Like that, I know it's a smaller sample size because he spent some time injured, but that's 69 plate appearances still and 71% hard contact. I'm 100% on board paying up for him today on this slate.
I mean, it's pretty simple. Stack the first 5 players in Minnesota and stick them up with, I'm doing it right now, a little Ponce de Leon and Homer Bailey. Call it a day. And
Polanco is going to be more of a GPP play for me. His splits versus lefties this year have been terrible. He's 78 WRC plus. He does show like 43% hard contact, so it doesn't concern me. But the ISO is under 100. So I know he's batting second, so it's more of a correlation opportunity thing.
Fire. You can make an argument to put Sano in there.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
he's been on a big hitting streak. I think it actually just ended, but he was heading into the break very hot. He's just the 8-hitter. It's the only thing.
Is he first base eligible, third base eligible in DraftKings? He's third base? Okay. On FanDuel. FanDuel's been – I don't get it lately. Like, they've been changing guys around. It's been driving me absolutely insane how they've been changing.
I don't know how they operate over there.
Position eligibility. So, first of all, you got DJ LeMahieu. He's been second base. I mean, that's where I would think DJ LeMahieu would be. And then all of a sudden he's at first base for a while, and now he's on third base, like eligibility on drive. It makes writing articles.
Oh, that's so funny. I didn't even realize I doubled up last week.
It's nice.
When you just open DraftKings up and you see money there that you didn't expect.
Yeah, it makes it fun. That's for sure. So I'm with you there. What do you think about targeting St. Louis as if you want to go completely contrarian? You got extremely hot temperatures in St. Louis, 90 plus degrees here at 1:15 p.m. in the afternoon. Wind blowing out slightly, like 5 miles an hour only. But going against Archer, Archer hasn't been great this year. He's had, he's flashed. I don't want to say brilliance like he used to. Like, sure, his last start he picked up 10 Ks. That was a season high for him. He only gave up 3 hits, but one was a bomb. Again, I forget who hit that bomb against, but the Cubs hit 3 home runs against him in his last 2 starts. He's prone to being blown up. He's got 21 home runs given up in 16 starts, and that's kind of what I'm looking at there, especially. And the fact that we talked about Minnesota, Milwaukee, even on it's a Coors slate, so there's some ownership going to be there. Oakland against Tommy Malone. So we've got all those teams. I think St. Louis is going to be like rock bottom ownership. And I mean, I'm not for it for cash games by any means, but a GPP pivot to get some low ownership and high upside against a pitcher that's prone to giving up home runs, I'm on board. I'm not in love with their lineup, like Tommy Edman, Jose Martinez, Paul Goldschmidt struggling. Tyler O'Neill's starting to heat up. He's got tons of power. That's pretty much his game, is power. On DraftKings, Goldschmidt at 3,300 is the only guy over 3K in the top 5 in that lineup. So
I mean, that's way too cheap for Goldschmidt. So for that reason, he deserves.
Even if he's struggling, it's been a great. Like, I love looking at these guys that we know are all-star / MVP type level players, and Goldschmidt has been that for Arizona for so many years, like 25 plus home runs, 100 plus runs and RBIs, just every single year. And then he comes into a year on a brand new team and he's struggling. Why is he? I mean, he's got 17 home runs. Sure, there's some of the powers there, but he's only hitting 250 with a 339 on base percentage. I really start looking at the numbers and saying, why? Why is he struggling? What's going on? Well, first thing that stands out is the BABIP, and that's batting average of balls in play. So any ball that's hit between first and third base, in play is counted as a ball in play. So he's sitting at 303 right now. For his career, he's at 351. So he's 50 points below that BABIP. So that tells me there's a little bit of regression coming. And then you start looking at like his K rate's the same. His walk rate is slightly lower, but not a whole bunch. The WRC plus is down. So I dug a little bit deeper. You start looking at his batted ball numbers. The only thing that really concerns me is that he's hitting less line drives and more ground balls, but his hard contact rate is a career high 48%. So again, that tells me that this regression is probably going to be coming. I mean, he's still hitting the ball hard. It's just not getting up in the air. He's hitting more ground balls, and that's why the BABIP is lower, because obviously you're hitting the ball on the ground. It's going to be fielded a lot easier than it is if you're hitting it in the air into the gaps and stuff like that. So I definitely believe, if you're in a season-long league, I mentioned this before the All-Star break, he's a trade. I believe the trade deadline's coming up in 2 weeks here if you're in season-long. I would go trade for Paul Goldschmidt. I've sent some offers out for him. I'm kind of lowballing some people right now just to kind of get a feel for what people really, how pissed off at Paul Goldschmidt they actually are in leagues. So I've had a couple guys come back to me. But the point is that I think he's too cheap. You're buying low on a player that has been MVP caliber for 4 or 5 years straight and got regression coming. So I think St. Louis is a good contrarian GPP play today. Anybody else you're looking at? I know on DraftKings, the Oakland game. Are you interested in Oakland at all?
Yeah, I mean, I always like to target the cheapest pitchers. Like the cheapest guy who he's going against. And even though the cheapest pitcher is just an opener for Seattle today, they've just been such a miserable team the last I think they feel the disappointment in themselves after how much they've really dropped the ball, and that's a hard thing. They need a spark, and I don't know where it's going to come from, but until it does, I'm definitely targeting pitching against them as well as offenses against them. Not as religiously as Miami in the past and Toronto in the past, and
right.
It's kind of, this happens a couple times a year in baseball where it's like a little bit of a changing of the guard in terms of the tiers of what offenses are the best and what are really struggling and who do you target against. Maybe 2 or 3 or maybe even more times a year, but it feels like coming out of the All-Star break is a bit of a change now. It's not as the flow chart has shifted. So,
the other still talking Oakland here.
Yeah, sorry, Oakland. I'm blanking on Oakland. That's what I was.
Yeah, no, I just
exactly. So the flow chart shifted a little bit, and I think Seattle is kind of on my flow chart right now.
Yeah,
in terms of targeting against.
Targeting against, yeah, and Tommy Malone's going to come in. I believe they have an opener. Yeah, Matt Caracity today is going to open. Whether he goes 1 inning, 2 innings, either way, the projected long reliever.
Tommy Malone actually used to be an A, so it could be a little revenge for him.
Yeah,
he was one of the top prospects back in the day.
He's got the second best WHIP, 0.95 on the slate so far this season. But what I like targeting Oakland for is they crush lefties much better than they do righties, like a 219 ISO versus a 189 versus righties.
Oh, yeah.
And then they've been red hot, 159 WRC plus over the last 7 days. So it feels like they've been starting to heat up. They put up some runs last night. And Tommy Malone gives up 46% fly balls. So I see negative regression coming for him, just because there's no pitcher in the league that gives up 46% fly balls like that, and only like a 13% home run to fly ball, right? So I think there's a little bit of regression coming there. And being that Oakland's better against lefties, I think I'm going to jump on board. I'm probably going to play some DraftKings just to get some exposure to Oakland on this early slate. Although I hate the park, but Oakland never seems to have problems. It seems like they're a good GP. I love Matt Chapman for cash. Let me get that across. Matt Olson when he's hot. Semien hitting leadoff, I don't mind. But for the most part, Oakland is going to be a team where I will target them for GPPs, mostly against lefties, just because they do have that, that double-digit run upside against lefties. So that's kind of the way I'm looking at it.
I'm trying to see. I don't want to talk myself out of it, but the more I look at Ponce de Leon's numbers, there is some regression coming for him as well. He is very expensive, and Pittsburgh does have good numbers against right-handed pitching. I know they don't have Josh Bell today, so that's obviously literally taking an MVP out of their lineup potential, so that's a big deal. But that being said, I mean, still 8 other guys in that lineup who have contributed to their 103 WRC plus against right-handed pitching. So I'm a little hesitant on DeLeon, but I think you can get away with it today because so many people will be doing it in cash, and he shouldn't, get blown up. I just don't like his price
relative to the other options for sure.
Yeah,
the price,
that's the only thing.
The price is definitely not as good on DraftKings at 9,600. That is a lot to pay. 7,300. Like
huge difference.
He's one of the cheapest options, so I'm 100% on board on him. And they're the outlier out of all his. I mean, he's come out of the pen a bit this year. He had an opener against San Diego at the end of June. That's the start. I don't want to call it a start, but technically it's a start because he had an opener. But whatever. That is the only time this season he's given up more than one earned run in an appearance. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. I would say out of 5 starts, one of them was he had an opener. The other 2 appearances this season were out of the bullpen. That one start against San Diego where he gave up 4 earned runs was the only time he's really been hit hard out of all those appearances. It's a very small sample size. So, yeah, I agree that we don't really know a whole bunch about him. We don't have a huge sample size. He only had 11 appearances last year, so he's very young. And he struggled at AAA at a 670 xFIP at AAA this season. So it's hard to trust him for sure. But, yeah, on FanDuel, I'm 100% on board.
He's a decent prospect, I think, so.
Yeah, he was drafted. He's like a 9th-round pick, but that was in 2014. So the fact that he's came through the system, he made it up to AA by 2016, jumped straight up to AAA in 2017, and he's kind of just been riding it through the AAA. It looks like the control is the big thing for him. He's had a walk rate since he got to AAA of 4+ per 9. So I imagine that's really what they're trying to work on is just that control. And I think once he gets that control, he's going to be a really good pitcher. I mean, he's throwing mid-90s fastball. But again, he's only right now a 1-pitch pitcher. He's 70% fastballs this season.
That's what I'm saying. That's going to catch up with you.
Yep. He needs to get that cutter going a little bit. He only throws at about 12.5%, and then the changeup is the big thing. If you're only throwing 2 or 3 pitches, you better have a good fastball changeup combination or a really good curveball slider, one of the 2. And he doesn't look like he has either right now. The curveball isn't great. The cutter is good, but again, he's only throwing it 12% of the time. And the fastball's been good. It rates out at 2.5, which is very high. It's small sample size again, but 70% of the time, you're going to need to throw some different pitches in there. So I know we went deep into Ponce de Leon here, but that kind of covers our early slate. Pretty much to sum up, we talked about Ponce de Leon a lot. We talked about Homer Bailey, getting him in. He's very cheap going up against Seattle. We talked about GPPs. Pivoting to Darvish and Gray. And then for offenses, we talked about obviously the Coors there. We love Minnesota as well. Oakland for DraftKings. I love Milwaukee, especially Keston Hiura. I think you can get.
I think that's a sharp call. Keston Hiura is a good prospect, and he's hot right now. So
and they moved him up to 4th in the lineup. So
yeah, for good reason.
I just wanted to see here his splits before I move on to the main slate. Yeah, he's been better against lefties. He's got a 143 WRC plus so far against lefties. So Milwaukee. So that kind of covers what we're looking at for the early slate today. So we're going to jump into the main slate. And just to preface before we talk about anything, we're going to talk about the pitchers. We're going to talk about the stacks. Kind of like there is no weather because a lot can change between now and 4 or 5 hours from now on the radar and what things are going to look like.
That's why you got to sign up with Roto Pros.
But that's where exactly. So if you sign up with Roto Pros, we're in there. I'm sharing pictures of radar. I'm watching radar on all the, I've got links on my sheet called Stadium Weather, and if you go in there, you can find whatever stadium you want. I've got ratings, my own personal ratings, 1 to 5, of what the weather is like, and then you can actually click the link and look at the radar or the hourly forecast. So I'll be paying attention to that, keeping everyone up to date. But just to start, I'm just going to go over the games that are going to be trouble tonight because there's a lot of them, and it's pretty much anything over there on the East Coast. So in New York, Tampa Bay at New York, looking at 70 to 80% chance of rain throughout the entire game. Washington at Baltimore, you're looking at 65 to 80% chance of rain throughout the entire game. Los Angeles at Philly, same story. and then Toronto at Boston. They're all 65 to 80% chance of rain. Right now, I've got them marked as a 4. I'm pretty if Locke was an hour from now, which it isn't. I thought it was earlier.
No.
If Maine Lock was an hour from now, I would probably fade all 4 of those games because it looks like heavy rain on the East Coast right now. But then the rest of the games are all good. And there's actually some good pitching options, and that's, I guess, where we'll start. I've number 1 and 2 in my model today, Clevenger and Paddock. I'm definitely liking both. Paddock has looked better. They sent him down to high A, and he didn't pitch when he was down there. They farmed him out, and a lot of people may not understand that. They're just pretty much sending him down so they can bring up another player to fill that roster spot while they're limiting his innings as a rookie. Now, by limiting his innings, and that's not while he's started. Since he's come back from high A, he's pitched 6 innings, 5 innings. I believe he's 90-plus pitches in both those. So limiting his innings overall. So they send him down to high A. He pretty much just sits there and does nothing. No pitching, probably does some stretching, stuff like that. They brought him up. He's looked just as good as he did early in the season. 14 Ks in his last 2 starts, only 5 hits. That's against St. Louis and at LA Dodgers. So Paddock is definitely my number 1, and then Clevenger is my number 2. I drafted him high in my season long this year. I was so happy to see his first 2 starts where he struck out 22 batters. He ended up with a back issue. Went on the DL, came back, struggled against Texas, gave up 5 earned runs.
He's a stud in season long.
Yeah, had a sprained ankle or an ankle strain or something, went back on the IL. Came back, struggled against Baltimore, gave up 7 earned runs, and has been elite since. Last 2 starts against Kansas City and Minnesota, he's only given up 8 combined hits in 11 innings, only 1 earned run.
I could feel a 50 bomb tonight.
15 Ks and only 2 walks. So he's looked absolutely elite lately. His price is still down. I think this is the last time we're going to see him below 10K if he has another good start. So I'm definitely jumping on board, minus 270 favorite. And he's going up against Detroit. Like, Detroit and Miami are below everyone else by quite a bit when you're looking at runs scored, whether it be season, last 30, last 7 days, last 14, doesn't matter. Pick out a date range. Detroit is one of the worst offenses in the league, even worse against righties. 75 WRC plus, 26% K rate. I am jacked to use Mike Clevenger tonight.
I mean, I agree completely with you about Mike Clevenger. I just happen to lean a little bit towards Robbie Ray over Paddock tonight. Just probably because of my hometown, my hometown's New York, but the bias of the fact that I now live in Miami, and it seems like the offense has been a little bit more alive lately. They've been putting up a lot more runs than they were in the past. So just for that reason alone, I would prefer to go for the K upside of Ray going against Chris. What's Texas striking out against left-handed pitching this year? What rate?
27.8%, which is just insane.
That's almost a third of the time. Like,
that seems like it's like a 7-day sample size, but no, that's the full season sample size.
If you expect, you don't expect this, but if you hope for about 7 innings from Ray tonight, which is what you should expect from your ace, I would say. A third of that it's 7 Ks right there. It's 21 outs. It's 7 Ks. So it's not quite a third of the, but baseball is a game of numbers, and 28% K rate is pretty massive. So I like Robbie Ray tonight. I forgot the name of the guy, Alex Young or something, who pitched last night for them. Same.
Great call on him, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I chose him is the same thing. Left-handed pitching against Texas. Like, they're just struggling. There was a little bit more to it. Like his velocity, his exit velocity and stuff was down. But Robbie Ray is, I think, worth it tonight. And then when you pair him with Clevenger, it literally equals 20K on the dot. So that just makes me feel good about it.
I love that 20K. If I can get in around 20K or less, I'm very happy with. I think that leaves you 20K leaves you what, about 3,900 per player after that on DK?
3,750.
3,750. Yeah. I'm very comfortable with that because you can go punt catcher at like 2,500
guys. Yeah, that are in the 2,000 somewhere that bring that up to 4K. And when you're stacking, if you choose your offensive stack the right way, you don't need the first 5 guys in their lineup, and you don't need the most expensive 5 in their lineup either.
No, exactly.
Quite often, the most optimal stacks, I would say, are like, this is completely off the top of my head and not like statistically, supported, but 1, 2, 7, 6, and 4 hitters. You know what I mean? Like, it's always a random ass stack, like in that lineup, and that's obviously dependent on the manager, switching up his right-handed and left-handed bats to make it difficult for his opposition. So
Yep. No, I 100% agree. What are your thoughts on the other pitcher I'm looking at? I agree with you on Ray with that strikeout upside. Clevenger's my number one. Paddock's right there is my number two.
Yeah, and I don't think Paddock's like a bad play. If Paddock were cheaper than Ray, I'd probably prefer Paddock. But
and again,
yeah, exactly. You know,
and again, it's a DraftKings versus FanDuel thing for me.
Right.
I think I would go a different direction, like you just mentioned on DraftKings, but FanDuel under 9K, I'll take Paddock. I think he's underpriced there. So
Totally.
this is another reason why me and Josh split DraftKings and FanDuel, and this is another reason why we cover both sites and talk about it and I play both sites because you can get these pricing differentials every single day. Like you may really like Chris Paddock tonight, but you don't want to pay up for him on DraftKings. It doesn't make your lineups right. Well, if you're playing on FanDuel too, it makes sense to jump on board.
He's priced like DeGrom and stuff right now.
Yep.
When DeGrom, I think he's more expensive than DeGrom was a few days ago when DeGrom came to Miami.
Yeah, exactly. So
I can't get behind that. That's I mean, will he pitch well tonight? And should he probably get value? Yeah, probably. You know, I'd like to think he's going to get 20 or low 20s at least, and that's if he gets the win and pitches 6-7 innings and gets his usual 7-8 Ks that he's been getting, which he should do. Miami offense has been bad. But they've also randomly been good, and you're not leaving yourself that much money for a very good offensive stack when you spend more than 20K on pitching. And Clevenger, I think, is like as close to a sure thing as you get tonight. I love right-handed pitching studs against Detroit, especially at home.
Yep. And then, like you said, Robbie Ray, lefties versus Texas, 28% K rate.
And I prefer right-handers against the White Sox right now, so I'm not huge on Danny Duffy tonight. And Erod, if he was cheaper, I would consider him. But he's just the exact same price as Ray and Clevenger for the most part. And I think they're if it ain't broke, don't fix it type situation.
Then you got the weather in there as well.
Yeah, exactly. We haven't even been talking about weather,
which is crazy because all the pitchers we've talked about being Clevenger, Ray, and Paddock are all in the good weather games. Erod, Domingo Herman, then you get into Chirinos, Kenta Maeda, and then obviously way down at the bottom with like Eric Fed, Pivetta, Brooks, and Sanchez.
Depending on the weather, I don't know what the weather is in Baltimore tonight, but I don't mind Eric Fed at all.
Terrible. Baltimore's one of the worst out of those four.
So weather aside, I like the matchup for Fed, but it sounds like it's not worth going near.
And I'm kind of the same way with Erod. I really like pivoting off. If the weather looks like it's maybe just going to be rain during the game, or they're going to play at least like 7-8 innings, I might go super contrarian and get Erod in there against the Jays. They just haven't been nearly as good against left-handed pitching. But again, we already talked about three other pitchers that are in great spots with no weather concerns. So I don't think you definitely don't need to go Erod unless you're trying to be super contrarian and you're watching the radar before lock. But I think we've kind of talked about our top guys. What about, is there anyone cheap? Like you said, you're not into Danny Duffy. I'm stacking against Danny Duffy tonight for a couple of reasons I'll talk about once we get into stacks. There's really
not that much cheap, but I'm kind of looking at Garrett Cole a little bit for that price. He's very expensive, so everyone's gonna automatically skip down to him or skip down past him. Excuse me. Especially with someone like Chris Paddock right below him, who's almost 2K cheaper, who has a home run of a matchup against Miami. So I think Cole is actually a very cool GPP contrarian option tonight. He dropped 30 against LA at home, 35 a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. So, if it's the same lineup without Trout, I mean, Garrett Cole is looking good.
Now, if you want to go cheap and you want to fit Cole, here is my thoughts on that. I believe he's going to have an opener. He usually does. They haven't announced it yet. He's sitting there as the starter right now for the Angels, Felix Pena. He's going up against Garrett Cole. I think you can actually jam both those pitchers in your lineup. You're staying within that 17, 18K. Pena has been tremendous lately. Like I think he's had an opener. Yeah, since April he's had an opener, but he's going like 5-6. His last start against Seattle,
no hitter, pretty much. Yeah,
7 innings. He gave up. Yeah, no hitter. 6 Ks, 1 walk.
The final 7 innings of their no hitter the other day.
Exactly. He's giving you 5+ Ks like every time he's going out there. So he's giving you a K+ per inning. He's really limiting the hits. He's only given up 5 hits in his last 16 innings. So
tough matchup, but he's too cheap. And the only difference for me, though, in my Cole, I'll tell you this right now, my Cole lineup for tonight, I think what I would probably do is pair him with Trevor Richards, because
Nice.
I think Paddock is going to be a very popular play tonight. So if you're going to fade him, the ultimate fade would be to take his counterpart, who also, this isn't the reason to take him, but it doesn't hurt to know that he did go for 30 points in San Diego earlier this year, where he got 5 innings, 1 hit, and 8 Ks. So Trevor Richards and Garrett Cole pretty much adds up to about our magic number of 20K too. So that's, it's like $200 short. So I like Pena a lot, and I like Richards for contrarian GPP vibes.
I do like that lineup construction. If people are going to be going with Paddock, you're going up to Cole to pivot off Paddock, and then you're going to the opposing pitcher, Trevor Richards. And to go along with your Trevor Richards, making me feel a lot better about it, is obviously it's the best pitchers park out there. And San Diego versus righties is a 26% K rate. So
yeah, and I will say this: Trevor Richards has a 5.36 xFIP and a 4.18 ERA. So I don't want people to think I'm being biased and only referencing stats, when it's convenient, because his peripheral numbers do not, they don't fill me with confidence. But it's kind of one of those situations where 3 or 4 variables are kind of there, and they all kind of lead toward one thing. And in order to maximize all 4 of them, that like the option of Richards makes the most sense. You're not going to put it in cash. You're not going to put the majority of your bankroll on it. You're not going to put a lot of money on it, anything like that. But in order to really maximize the GPP upside lineup, I think Cole and Richards make a lot of sense together.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And that's we want to look at this more. That's something we talked about kind of off air, is not just we like pitcher A, pitcher B, pitcher C. We also want to break it down and tell you why, but then we want to get into more of the game theory stuff too. Like Josh just went over. That was an excellent description of how to go about GPP. Is exactly what
you got to look
said.
For any edge you can get, especially when you're the small guys like us who aren't playing the 150, 200, 300, whatever the hell lineups a night. With algorithms and just max entering all these contests. Yeah, sure, great, good for you. That's not easy. I'm not saying it is, but the people who are our customers and our listeners who are getting into DFS and want to, understand the method to the madness, that's important to understand stuff like that. More important than it would be to just read what every other DFS site says, the same, same stack and the same couple pitchers to target, and with not much of an explanation other than they have stats that say this.
Yep. 100%. So there's a lot more than just picking up players you like and creating player pools. You have to really start getting into the game theory and the strategy side of thing, and how to get the most edge. Because 5 years ago, it was a lot easier to cash and double ups every single day. Even GPPs, just to even hit min cash was a lot easier. Everyone's got the same information now. It's how you process that information and then think about what other people are going to do, pivot off that. And that makes a lot of sense in high variance sports like this. I talk about it a lot with PGA and NASCAR. If a driver in NASCAR is going to be 70% owned in GPPs, I'm going to fade him because he's got the same chance of crash pretty much as everyone else that's out there. So I'll fade him and go to someone that's going to be 20% less owned but has the same upside. And you can look at it that way in all sports. Same with wide receivers. This week, Antonio Brown's going to be the highest owned wide receiver, but people are overlooking Julio Jones for some reason. Maybe it's a matchup. Maybe it's whatever it happens to be. He's going to be 15, 20% less owned. I'm going to go that way in GPP because they've got the same exact upside, I would say. Maybe the opportunity is a little bit lacking versus one or the other during any given week, but the upside is still there. So getting the less ownership just helps you build and help you get to a spot where if your core group goes off, you're going to win the GPP, not tie with 50 of your closest friends.
Yep.
And then someone asked me of lineup construction last night. Before we get into some stacks here, this kind of pertains to stacks. I was asked in chat how I go about building my core for GPPs. Like if I'm building the 20 max in DK, or if I'm going, I think there's a 20 max in FanDuel now. I'd have to check. Or let's just say even the 10 max. What I'm going to do is we went over our pitchers. we went over our core stacks for the early slate. So what I will do is I'll select a couple pitchers. For me on FanDuel, I'm going to select, say, Paddock. So I'm going to go Paddock, and I talked about my favorite, let's go early slate just because I've got all this information in front of me. Ponce de Leon is the pitcher I'm going to start with in my building my GPP core, and I've talked about Milwaukee. So I'm going to go Milwaukee 1-4 with Ponce de Leon. That's how I'm going to start. That's my core. I'm going to take that core and I'm going to copy it about, depending on how many lineups I'm going to do. Let's just say, for instance, I'm going to do 20 lineups. I'm going to take that core and I'm going to copy it 5 times. And then I'm going to fill in with my other favorite plays from my other stacks that I like. So I don't know exactly. I don't have this plugged in at the very moment, but depending on how much money you have left over, let's say you got 3,000 left over. That's a pretty good amount. You can pretty much go. I'm going to go and mix that with, say, St. Louis. So I'm going to go and do a St. Louis stack and a Milwaukee stack. And then for my next one, I'm going to keep that Milwaukee 1-4 with Ponce de Leon. And then I'm going to take another stack. Who else did we talk about early? Oakland. I know they're not on FanDuel, but I'm just kind of going off theory here. I'll mix Oakland in there in the next stack. And then I'll go and I'll mix Seattle in the next stack. And I'll just kind of keep going on that road until I get my 10 lineups or 5 lineups complete. And then I'll switch that core up. So maybe it's Ponce de Leon and St. Louis 5 times now, and then I'll go in and switch the others. So what I'm trying to do, and I'll do this in all sports, is create a core, whether it be a 4-person stack and a pitcher, whether it just be a 4-person stack. I do it for golf with 3 golfers, NASCAR, 2 or 3 drivers. The key here is to build a core and then copy that a few times. So when that core goes off, Milwaukee 1-4, they all get 2 hits and they put up big time numbers. Ponce de Leon gets 6-7 strikeouts in the win. You want the rest of your lineup to have the best chance at winning you that GPP, and the only way to do that is to make multiple lineups and switch in the other guys so that when that core goes off, you really capitalize. So I'm going to be doing a strategy video where I'm actually going to show you and share my screen, so it's a little bit easier to understand for those of you watching. But that's just kind of, I guess, a quick and easy explanation of how I go about building GPP lineups using my core system. But moving on, I haven't heard from you in a while. Who's your top stack tonight?
I'm sorry, I'm just amazed at Garrett. The more I look at Garrett Cole, the more I love him as a player.
He's unreal.
Days this year, dude. 180 days in like 120 innings or 130 innings. It's insane.
I love your GPP pivot on him tonight because he's expensive. 2, there's other popular pitchers that are going to be there. 3, the matchup isn't great because LA only strikes out 18%
totally.
of the time.
Trout will probably be out, no?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think he's projected
to
start. What's he missed? 2 games? Yeah, I think he's going to miss tonight again.
He's got a calf problem. Like, there's no reason to rush him back. Like,
no, not at all. Like, that's the player you don't want to rush back.
Yeah,
I mean, they're not really in the playoff race.
Too, and it's hurt them. So
yeah, exactly. Leave him out. Let him rest up. So targeting against this is like
5% owned tonight across the board. I think.
What'd you say? Sorry.
Garrett Cole will be under 5% owned across the board tonight.
Ooh, I like it. I'm definitely going to have some in GPP.
Flash, you name it. DraftKings, FanDuel, I don't care. Under 5%.
Yep. And, I mean, we talked about Ponce de Leon going up against Pittsburgh without Josh Bell. This is a completely different story because Garrett Cole is an elite pitcher, probably, I would say, Cy Young, American League right now, 37% K rate. And no Mike Trout. So that's kind of the same situation, but it's not because you're dealing with an elite pitcher versus a value guy. So
yeah, I love it. And to be honest, I kind of like talking about sneaky stacks. I kind of like the White Sox.
Yeah, I've got them labeled on the sheet. They were one of the first ones I had on there.
Good.
Hate the park, but Danny Duffy's been pretty terrible lately.
Duffy's been bad. You got 4.64 ERA, 5.27 WHIP. 89 mile an hour exit velocity, which isn't the worst I've ever seen, but it's not good. And obviously the White Sox hit lefties better than righties, and they have a 102 WRC plus. So
he's been even worse lately.
Yeah, exactly. What'd you say?
His last 8 starts going back to May 31st. He has given up 28 earned runs, 9 home runs, and walked 19 batters, which is about 4 per 9, and his ERA is at 5.86 in that time, and only a 5.43 xFIP. So he hasn't been the xFIP isn't saying, okay, well, he's maybe just getting hit hard or BABIP'd really hard. No, he's just been absolutely terrible for 8 straight starts, giving up home runs as well. So I'm definitely on board with the White Sox there. And, I mean, there are lots of good offenses tonight, so I think they're going to be super low owned.
I don't mind stacking that game in general, honestly, and just kind of running it with Kansas City and the White Sox.
Yeah. They're maybe not – I don't – okay, I'm going to get back to this. I said they're probably going to be low owned. That isn't going to be the case if those other 4 games don't play or they look really bad with weather. But if 2 of them even go, especially Boston, because they're like they're over a run better
the best stack
tonight.
They're implied for the most runs by a lot. You know, they make the most sense if the weather's okay. Yeah,
and Aaron Sanchez is absolutely terrible. So I kind of hope that game plays so that we can maybe pivot off of it. Because it's going to just increase the ownership of everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And then after them, I really like Kansas City tonight going against Nova. Nova's same story, absolutely terrible. So game stack in that game, I could definitely see. We got 11. Okay, everything lines up for this game to be you just absolutely game stack as much as you possibly can. Nova sucks. Duffy sucks. They both give up home runs, multiple home runs in games. There's an 11-mile-an-hour wind blowing out to left center. It's 95-plus degrees at game time tonight in Kansas City. They're both projected for 5-plus runs. Load up on that game. I'm just going to say that.
Well, full-on stack makes a lot of sense.
Yep. Because, we talked about the pitching in the Houston-LA game. Probably going to keep that game low scoring. Not really looking at targeting anyone there. Maybe Arizona versus Jesse Chavez. He's been pretty much terrible. I know some people have been using him as a punt pitcher.
Yeah, because he's been and in the right matchup, it makes sense, but not now.
No, Arizona's starting to heat up again. They do hit lefties better, but they are starting to heat up. I like that top of the line, like with Marte. Walker's been good. Jake Lamb maybe coming around. He's got some power there. So I think we can – that's a cheap stack. There's no one really too expensive. Marte is getting up there, but you can definitely mix it in with like a 1 to 4 or 3 to 6, somewhere in there, stack with Arizona because Chavez. It's a good hitting environment in Texas. And again, I will say this. The Texas weather, they show wind blowing in at 12 mile an hour, but Texas is a stadium they've done studies on since they changed some stuff back in, I believe it was the early 2000s or something like that. The wind doesn't affect things as much in Texas. That wind blowing in at 12 miles an hour, actually, they talk about how it cycles around and blows out to right. So that's kind of good for left-handed bats. So, that just helps Marte a little bit there. So I'm not a scientist by any means, but I did read some stuff and how it looks like the wind kind of cycles through that stadium. So don't get scared off just because it's showing 12 mile an hour wind blowing in is the only thing I'm getting out there. And then, you can't really target San Diego at Miami. We talked about liking both of those pitchers. The 4 games that are, I don't really want to get too much into those games. We talked about Boston. We're going to target them if that game plays. Cleveland at Detroit. We're playing Clevenger. Now, what do you think about going up against Turnbull as a stack? Cleveland's been not great. They're probably going to be lower owned than Chicago and Kansas City, I would think, tonight. Would you GPP pivot to them, possibly?
Mm-hmm. No, I don't think so.
I don't not quite get in the whole – they're projected for 5.8 runs. I'm not quite understanding that just because, Turnbull hasn't been great. He hasn't been bad either. He's got a 3.59 ERA, 4.8 xFIP. He's only given up more than 3 earned runs in 3 of his last, I believe, the whole season. 3 of his 18 starts, he's only given up more than 3 earned runs. And the home run to fly ball rate isn't high. He doesn't give up a ton of home runs there. And then you got the wind blowing in. So I don't see how Cleveland is 5.8. So if I can get out there and I can find in the betting market somewhere a team total Cleveland, I think I might go on the under with that. I really like that bet. And even the under on the whole game in general.
We're talking about a Vegas bet. Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. I thought we were talking about Turnbull or Cleveland as an option.
No, yeah, I was. I'm just saying I don't understand. I don't get how they're close to 6 implied runs tonight because Turnbull hasn't really been that terrible.
It's true. It's true. People probably just look at his record, but he's got a decent whip and a decent ERA. So, yeah.
So I definitely not going there. And then we got Phillies Dodgers again. That's another rain game. Just got a kid waking up here, so I'm just knocking on the other kid's wall to get her to go get her. Anyways, another rain game, but if it goes, Dodgers have been red hot. Jock Peterson continues to be underpriced on FanDuel. you need to lock him in your cash lineups if that game plays, because he's under 3K leading off, crush. He hits for power. The average isn't great. We all know that. He strikes out some, but $2,700 for a leadoff hitter for a red-hot Dodgers lineup like Verdugo, Turner, Bellinger, Muncy hitting behind him. Now Pollock's got home runs in 3 straight. A leadoff hitter in that environment against Nick Pivetta, that's just like, that should be the first player you plug in your cash lineups tonight if that game plays. But of course there's rain, so this night is just going to turn into a headache. I can just tell 5 p.m. Eastern this afternoon is going to be just an absolute headache tonight.
Where do you stand on this Lucroy Machado Marisnik fight going on right now?
You know what? I haven't really paid too much attention to it. What's going on there? What did I miss?
Marisnik just like trucked.
Oh, yeah. He ran over Lucroy, right. He got suspended for it.
Yeah, and Machado was really pissed off about it because the Angels like hit Marisnik with a pitch, I think, really hard.
Yeah.
I don't know why Machado's winning.
Machado gets mad at everything.
He bugged out last night on Instagram Live and like was calling a lot of people out, and like Eric Burns and Plesac.
Oh, yeah, on MLB Network.
Yeah, he was going hard.
Yeah, looking at the play, you can kind of, it's hard to break down slow motion when you're breaking down something that is actually full speed, and you're making reactions in like fractions of seconds of which way to slide and whatever. The way I look at it.
Oh, they hit Marisnik in like the face.
Yeah, it wasn't good. And
I didn't realize that.
It's tough for me because Lucroy was on the inside of the baseline. He was on the inside of the baseline. Marisnik was coming in down the baseline. Now, I could see if Lucroy was on the outside of the baseline, in foul territory, and Marisnik was maybe trying to dive in and do a slide on the inside. You rarely see those slides on the inside. The fact that Lucroy was on the inside of the baseline and he still made that move to the inside and just leveled him in the head, I'm 100% on board with that. Was totally Marisnik's bad.
Oh, and then Machado went hard last night because he says Burns and Plesac only care that when white people get thrown at.
Oh my God!
And he doesn't care about when Latino players get thrown at in the head. So it's just like, but Machado went hard on Instagram. Like, he's retarded.
Yeah, they defend everyone. I don't really. He just gets mad over everything.
When a ball goes at a guy's face, no one's looking at what the race of the person is. They're just looking at the situation and what happened. Like,
yeah, you ran my catcher. I'm throwing at you. I don't care what color you are.
Look who's talking, Mr. Dirty Machado, the fucking guy who cleats people and tries to break ankles.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Coming from him, I don't take that with a grain of salt.
Joke. Just joke.
Anyways, back to tonight here. That pretty much sums it up because the other games were the biggest narrative is we're going to have to watch weather.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, look, I loved it. It's no secret. Everyone saw what the Rays have been doing and things like that. Like when games are in Baltimore, it's usually a good situation to target the offense going against them. They have horrible pitchers. They have an even worse bullpen. They lose many, many games, so they're in mop-up roles like from the 6th inning on. So, okay, yeah, we all know that by now. Anyone who's not just playing DFS for the first time today knows that. So, but the weather is terrible. So, keep an eye on it. If it somehow opens up, then Washington opens up. Yeah, it's going to be interesting, and we can't really touch too more on it without knowing the weather. So it makes it even more important to get over to rotopros.com. Sign up for your free trial today. Weekly, monthly, and yearly subscriptions. If you use promo code MLB when you sign up, your first payment after the trial will be 50% off. And if you're signing up for a yearly membership, that's some big savings. So jump on board with that. We're going to be monitoring the weather throughout the day. We've got our skeletons for the yearly lineup coming out in about half an hour here. Now that lineup lock, I've confirmed it is at 1 p.m. Eastern. I've got the time right. And then this afternoon, like I said, we're going to be monitoring the weather in chat, providing some info, radar looks, stuff like that, screenshots from the radar. And we'll go from there. So very important to pay attention to that weather today. So it makes our service where we do a lot of one-on-one coaching and helping people out this way. Makes it very, very important. So get over there, get your free trial. Josh, thanks for joining me. Thank you.
Good show. We broke down both slates here. If anyone's got questions, like I said, jump into that RotoPros chat or hit us up on Twitter at RotoPros. You can hit me up on Twitter as well at Jaeger_bombs9. Lots of ways to help you guys out. Let's go get some green screens, and good luck today, everyone.
Thanks, Chris.